Hi, everyone, and welcome to your Week 33 Modern World launch. We're going to continue our work through the project as well as learn a little bit more about one of the focus areas that you guys are doing. To update you on the Focus on the Finish Challenge, the results were tallied on Friday, April 6th at 11 a.m., so any work that you did after that on Friday or over the weekend was not included. So these are our most recent results, and it looks like 8th grade has jumped the 7th grade, and 9th grade is still pretty firmly behind. When we look at the overall results, 8th grade is just clinging to a lead over the 7th grade. The thing that you want to look at is that only 12 out of 24 of the 9th graders are even somewhat participating right now. So that's less than half. The good news is that there's a lot of you who aren't working. So that means that you have a lot of work to do, and any work that you choose to do can only help your team. So you guys have a lot left to complete than the other grades do. So if even some of the remaining 12 that aren't really doing anything finally kick it into gear, you guys have a decent chance that you guys can overtake them because you have so much left to do. So for right now, 8th grade is in the lead, but 7th grade is close behind, and 9th grade is in a whole other realm. So the end is near for this school year. There's 35 days left as of today. That is not a lot of time. So as I said previously, there's only about half of this class, half of the 9th graders who are even in a position to do well this year. So the 12 of you who are not really working in the summit, some of you do listen to these launches or at least pretend to listen. It's really, really important that you start getting to work. This last month or two of the school year is going to fly by. And as we've said before, there is no opportunity for summer school this year. So if you think that like last year you're going to be working through and have till August to do it, that's not the case. Our principal will be putting out a message soon if you're thinking otherwise. Again, your final project is the Art as Expression project. We're basically, in so many words, looking at how art can show the perspective of those that are responding to trauma that they might have experienced in war. So we're kind of looking, we're going to be getting into that a little bit more. But this week I want to focus on one of the focus areas to try to help you guys turn something green. So this one would be the effects and costs of World War I. If you have not done that yet, this should help you tremendously. I recommend, listen to this launch and then request to take it right away. The biggest term that you'll probably learn in this whole focus area is disillusionment. And what that is a feeling of disappointment resulting from the discovery that something is not as good as it was believed to be. Also known as a loss of belief in morality, love, etc., or just flat out hopelessness. You have to understand that a lot of these men went into war really, really excited and really jumping at the opportunity to show that their country was better than everybody else. They had a sense of national pride. However, when they got there and they saw how awful war really was and the trench warfare, a lot of it, they're digging holes out 10 feet in the ground, and they're spending a lot of their time in these trenches, and there's stalemates, there's long days, there's rats and sickness and terrible conditions. They're sitting beside dead bodies. I mean, war is absolutely horrible. So while they're over in this trench warfare, they started to experience disillusionment that war and going to fight for their country was not what it was cracked up to be. The causes of this disillusionment can be post-traumatic stress disorder or shell shock, loss of faith in your country's leaders, really wondering if your leaders had your best interests in mind, witnessing death that brought no benefit and starting to wonder, did anybody really win? Who's winning this trench warfare? And then also returning home where no one understood the experience. So what disillusion led to was the lost generation. And the lost generation is a term that refers to the people who survived the war but were left scarred by the effects of war. The lost generation, what they decided to do was turn to art in order to express themselves and how they were feeling right after the war. They would express their post-war feelings by abandoning traditional styles and themes. So this is where things got a little more creative. a little more abstract, and they started to kind of express themselves a little differently than the traditional style. The first example was Cubism. That's where distorted versions of reality, and probably the best example and what you will see on the focus area is Pablo Picasso. He used abstract art with disconnected figures and unique colors and forms to express the chaos of society after the war. So this is one of his examples on the right side here. You can tell it is a person, but just that distorted abstract version of a reality. So that's what Cubism was, and that grew tremendously after the war. There was also Surrealism, which promoted the power of imagination and rejected the rational mind. And one of the biggest examples of this movement was Salvador Dali. So it just kind of putting objects in places where they don't belong. So it looked pretty real, but they would just kind of do some really creative, crazy things. So that was also a big movement. The writers also tried to capture a sense of the hopelessness of war. So a lot of writers actually experienced the war. Most men were involved in war efforts in some way, and they came home and they wrote about it and wanted to express how terrible it was. So some of the most famous writers were T.S. Eliot. He's known for writing The Wasteland and other poems. J.R.R. Tolkien, who some of you, if you're Lord of the Rings or The Hobbit fans, he actually started writing in response to the war in the 1920s. And then Ernest Hemingway, famous for A Farewell to Arms and some other books in the 20s and 30s. And then there was also the crazy dances of the 1920s, the Roaring Twenties. You'll see in some of these pretty crazy dance moves, but it allowed people to kind of vent and to release their pent-up emotions after the war. So dance crazes really started taking into effect in the 20s, and people could kind of let loose a little bit. So some other key terms that you're going to want to study for this focus area: pay attention to the Treaty of Versailles. The main thing would be just knowing that that is the treaty that ended World War I, but knowing that it also is what kind of led to World War II, ironically. So if you look at this cartoon, the terms of World War I basically told the Germans that they had to pay huge, what's called reparations, to repair for what they did across the world, since they technically started the war. They were the first to invade. So the Germans then became really, really angry that they had to pay all this money, and then tensions rose, and that's ultimately what led to World War II. Also pay attention to the term shell shock, or we were calling it PTSD, rationing, total war, and nihilism. So those are some other things. If you pay attention to those, but also pay attention mostly to the art that happened in this era, you guys should have no problem passing the focus area. So I'd like to see you all give it a try this week if you haven't done it yet. Week 33 runs April 11th through April 17th. I'd like to see you guys try to master the effects and costs of World War I focus area. If you'd like to, and you're on pace, try the challenge, the additional focus area of enabling forces of imperialism, and then also submit checkpoint 2 of the Art as Expression project. So next week, hopefully I have more of you submitting some of these checkpoints for the project and feel more on pace. Then I'll get into checkpoint 3 next week. All right, I hope you guys have a productive week, and please reach out if you need anything.